Team RTFC.baconicecream.com.
Hello to everyone joining me for my first video in quite some time. This is Diabolik, or Eric, from Team RTFC and baconicecream.com. Had some shakeups with jobs and positions and shifts, so I unfortunately now work overnights. And it's been really hard for me to connect with Rich and the other Bacon Ice Cream team to put together videos and stuff. It also didn't help that Transformers got canceled in the middle of the COVID pandemic while I was running a COVID lab. So I know I've shown up a couple of times here and there, but I'm going to be trying to work with Rich on some other projects and try to be a little bit more consistent with adding to the library of work that we produce. So I want to start out this video. This is my first take on a Lorcana video. I want to preface this with, if anyone doesn't know, I am a huge advocate of supporting local stores. Used to run a couple actually in central New Jersey. I'm going to state that at the moment I do not own any physical cards of Lorcana. So the backstory. My buddy Mike, knew him from when I worked at Target, and called me, I think it was like 3 weeks ago from this recording, and was like, "What do you know about Lorcana?" And I'm like, well, I know about it. I remember when they announced the IP and like that this was coming to market, and I was like, oh man, I am so broke. I can't jump back into another TCG. Just in general, Rich and I had invested a lot of money into the Transformers TCG, and then when his home flooded with Hurricane Ida, we lost, the majority of that collection. So, there were just kind of bad feelings in my soul about it, and just kind of going, I know the TCG investment requires, a lot of upfront money sometimes, and especially because of the way I know I like to collect, I'd want to get a playset of everything, and then I'd probably want to get a playset of everything for Rich, just so that we could both play and build whatever decks and do the testing. It's kind of what we were doing with Transformers, sharing a collection, but basically building 2 full collections out of it. So I was, my buddy Mike was looking for cards, and he was calling all the stores and all this other stuff, and I happened to mention, hey, I know a store in North Jersey, or I guess North Central Jersey, Highlander Games in Boonton, New Jersey. And I was like, they're running a league, they're doing this thing, I can go check them out. Mike works Saturdays. I didn't. I actually, my niece and nephew were visiting from Florida, so I scooped everyone up, drove up to the store, because I talked to one of the owners, Rob, and he said that they had starter decks that, were available. I misinterpreted that as they were starter decks that I could purchase, because I was going to buy them for Mike and be able to be like, here, buddy, happy birthday. I haven't seen you in a while. And turned out they were demo decks, proxy decks that they had printed up so that people could learn to play. So a little disappointed there, but I get it. Launch had just happened. There's a big void in available product. I didn't know how the game worked. I actually hadn't watched any videos on how the mechanics worked or anything like that. I was very blind to it. This was really let me get exposed to it all at once. All I knew is this game existed. Didn't know, any of the factors of how the game was supposed to actually interact. Taught my son and I taught my nephew how to play the game by kind of reading through the rules, getting some side help. Highlander Games was running their league on Saturdays. It starts at noon, and we got there just about noon thinking we were going to be able to buy a starter deck and participate. And basically I was like, there's 3 starter decks. I'll buy one for each of us. We'll crack them. Mike won't mind. We'll play a couple of rounds. We'll learn how the game works, and then I'll give them over to Mike. So instead, we learned with these proxy decks, and I really enjoyed learning more about the mechanic. And I was like, okay, I'm enjoying this. Let me look into a little bit more. So as we were driving home, I happened to be passing by a Walmart. Now, Highlander and I are absolutely, cool. I play Super Show, the game there. I will it's about 35 minutes away from my house. So if I'm looking for something, I'll usually go there. But Rob was like, I don't know when we're going to get a restock. And I was like, no problem. So I just happened to stop by Walmart, and they had a full display of starter decks. And I was like, well, hey, perfect timing. Let me buy some. So I bought all 3. I was going to buy 2 of each, because at that point I was like, I'll buy the starter decks and I'll bring them over. Rich and I can learn how to play, whatever. And it turned into, they would only let me buy 3. So I bought 1 of each. I was like, I'll come back later, hoping that everyone in the area, I don't know. As a guy that used to run a store, I was a little naive. I also think I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to get into the game and, drop that money. So I was just kind of like, whatever. So bought the 3 decks, told Mike we made plans to meet up on Sunday. But in between me buying the 3 decks and Sunday, I was like, I really do like this game. I started looking at videos, started watching the Forbidden Mountain channel, because I knew them from when they played Transformers, and they were known as Vector Sigma. So I started looking at their content because I was already familiar with how their mentality towards games worked, and then started doing more research, found Reddit and a bunch of other stuff, and then learned about Pixelborn. And so learned about Pixelborn, kind of got that installed and started poking around at it. So I guess the end result of that whole story was support your local stores. I'm a little bit of a hypocrite right now because everything I have that I've been working with is digital, but I do plan on buying into the game once there becomes more availability and I can support my local stores. There's a couple of stores in the area. I now live in Hunterdon County. There's 2 stores in Flemington and Highlander that are all saying that they're running leagues and stuff. It's just they don't have the product for us to buy, and so I gotta wait for that to become available in order to dabble. And then I'll look at the singles market and everything else. I've been following the Forbidden Mountains, financial, things. Scott and I have similar approaches to how the singles markets probably should be working versus how they are working right now. His is absolutely from a business, plot out how things work, and I've lived it and been the vendor doing all of that when hot new games come out, and companies don't underproduce. I've seen both. I've seen companies that underproduced product because they didn't want to have too much, excess in case it failed, and I've seen companies, short print themselves when they had a great game. Everyone's up in arms about it, and it makes sense. I mean, the people that really want to play the game want to play the game. The people that want to collect the cards want to collect the cards. The problem is, Ravensburger, however you're supposed to pronounce it, they were conservative in their approach just to make sure that they didn't bankrupt themselves by producing a game that wasn't going to be able to support itself. I mean, we all, TCG player, aficionados, the people that dabble, the people that understand collectible markets, things like that, we could anticipate this. We could have seen it. We could have been like, hey, I mean, I saw the announcement and went, that's going to make a ton of money, right? I know, right? I have my buddy Mike. He's a huge Disney fan. He's a card game fan. They cross over perfectly. Disney fans are already like, we pay a premium for Disney stuff. Card game fans are like, we pay a premium for cardboard, right? It's a great crossover. Look at what happened with Transformers when they launched, right? That game was created by Wizards of the Coast. It has the backing of Hasbro. They owned the IP, whatever, all of the history with that stuff. And it turned into their first wave still didn't have enough to meet the demand that was out there. And so it became an issue. And Wizards of the Coast has the track record for understanding how these market trends work, right? They produce Magic the Gathering, right? You can't turn around and tell them, hey, you didn't anticipate that. They were conservative with it. You get conservative with first waves and, even sometimes second waves because of how far in advance you have to produce this product in order to get it through the printer and get it, on, the shipment, the boat, the wherever it's coming from, to make sure it's going to be available. Get the marketing done so you can get it out and in front of things. Ravensburger was working with, doing their launch at Gen Con, which, if you've ever been to Gen Con, is already a giant mess of people, and no one knows what's going on, and it's almost word of mouth sometimes to figure out where, if something's that hot, everyone's going to be wanting it, and it was a mess. I didn't go to Gen Con this year. I know a bunch of people that did, and everyone was talking about either it was a great experience because you got in early enough and they handled it well for the beginning because you didn't get screwed over, or it was a mess because, hey, they didn't manage their lines, they didn't do all this stuff. And I'm not here to talk about that because I didn't experience it, but for the people that are out there blaming Ravensburger, blaming scalpers at first, I don't know when this became a scalper thing. This is how trading card games have been for decades. Magic's been around for 30 years. I've been playing since beta. This is kind of how it's been. Yeah, people open packs, and back in the day, hell, I played at Target, when it was in Hillsborough, New Jersey, and they had some singles, and I don't know if they were opening packs or what. I don't know how their business model was there. It was before I worked there. It was a long time before I worked there. I was still in high school when Magic came out, but there's a track record of you have to have product, sealed product and singles product in order to create the two different markets that you need, right? If you're going to run a business for this, you have to. There's people that don't want to buy packs, they just want the specific cards that they want, and they'll chase them down and they'll spend $30, $40, $50 on one card because it's going to make their deck operate because they want to play at a competitive level. And then you have people that like to collect, they like to open packs, because there's an endorphin rush when you open up a pack, you don't know what you're going to get, and it's like, yes, that's that card, or oh man, I didn't get that, but now it goes on to the next pack. But you have to have it, and you want to have prize support, you want to be able to put together things, to run events. So it just kind of needs to exist in all levels. So I'm not going to hate on any store that opened product in order to get singles to serve their clientele, but it does eat up the supply that's out there, and but then it turns into now you can buy the cards you're looking for if you didn't get that card, right? I know the Forbidden Mountain has a shop on TCG Player, and I looked at their pricing, because I don't own anything. I was like, I don't even know where to start. But the market's hot, and if you're not willing to invest that money, you can wait it out, and you should be able to get most of what you're looking for. All right, so 10-minute rant, probably even more aside. Support your local game stores, support your local community, because that's how you're going to keep having this game available and grow. If you start saying, I'm not going to buy this stuff from local game store because they open product, you're just going to create the opportunity for either you never get to participate, or they're not going to buy the game anymore and bring it in because their clientele isn't looking for it. I don't think that's the case with this game. I'd be very surprised, but that's my, if to use the vernacular, hot take on it. I don't think it's a hot take. It's just it's actually kind of a lukewarm take, because I'm not mad or upset or anything about it. It's just this is the reality, and this is the world I've lived in for so long, that I can say that from the experience. But that aside, so let's talk about the deck I put together on Pixelborn. I kind of learned how Pixelborn's controls work by playing the best deck in the meta according to a couple of different videos, which was the Ruby Amethyst deck, to kind of learn how it went, because I could find that deck list readily. And then I started consuming some other sources for information and kind of looking at it and going, what do each of the inks do? I was going to call them shards because that's all I could think of, but what does each ink excel at, and what's their limitation, what's their weakness? And while sometimes deck building you want to approach it from shore up your weaknesses by your alternate color, fixes that, which is why I think the Ruby Amethyst deck works pretty well, because there's removal, there's card draw, you kind of can keep that moving, there's big threats. I kind of took this approach looking at it from how can I quest for as much lore as possible and have cards that I can afford to get out onto the field and not feel like I'm constantly under pressure by not having cards to ink. I'm running 4 Lilo, Make a Wish, or Making a Wish. She's a 1 cost, uninkable, but she quests for 2. The 1/1 didn't matter as much as if I can get her to go in for 2 or 4 lore. I think I'm winning there. Or it was beneficial for me to have played her, even if she gets removed. Also, if she gets taken out by a cannons or a smash or whatever, they played a card to get rid of her, which I'm hoping maybe she got the 2 lore, and they spent a card to get rid of her, and I'll take that as a benefit. Running 4 Stitch New Dog, primarily the 2/2 helps. He's inkable, but also because I can shift in the Stitch Rockstar, which because one of the big detriments to this deck is drawing cards, and Stitch can help you draw cards. Running 3 of the Duke of Wesselton, Opportunistic Official. I've only played him once, and because I don't think I had the Lilo, and he's okay. I mean, I'm gonna usually challenge with him more than I'm gonna quest with him, but if it's comes down to if the mentality in this deck is just quest with everyone you've got, he's going to get you 1 at least, and then they have to invest something to take him out, whether it's a card or an attack. Captain Hook's going to slam into him, and they're both going to trade. Actually, I don't remember the stats on Captain Hook off the top of my head. I think they would trade, but anyway, not the point, right? He's not there to generate a lot of lore. He's there to be there to either knock something off the board or get that 1 or 2 lore, hopefully, before he dies. I'm running 4 of Simba Protective Cub. Remember hearing someone talk about this on a stream, and they're like, how amazing is it? And I was like, how amazing is it, right? It's a 2/3 quest for 1. And after starting to play with it, I think after my 3rd game, I was like, I get why he's so good. He's got Bodyguard. He can come down. He can, you can exert him immediately to protect something else, like your Lilo. He sticks around a little bit, and if they don't take him out immediately, you can quest with him, and he's still doing the same protection, so he's getting you 1 lore, protecting things. They have to invest into him or play targeted removal on the other characters. So he works. If you have a way to heal him, even better, but I don't even think you need to. But only playing 1, I only end up usually playing 1, maybe 2 if it's late, but play the 1, let him protect. I ink the other ones because he's already done his job. He's protected you in some form or fashion for a turn or 2. Playing of the 2-cost Flynn Rider, Charming Rogue. He's good because if they want to avoid challenging him, because they're going to discard a card, and Hand Disruption is one of those things. Yes, they get to choose the card, but it's a card disadvantage at that point for them. He quests for 2. It kind of meets the theme of what I was shooting for, is quest for as much as you can. If they want to challenge him to take him out, cool. I found people like to use the cannons on him a lot because they don't want to deal with discarding the card. But at that point, they use the cannons, which they basically discarded the card they would have used to challenge him, or to discard when they challenge him. So I feel like it's kind of netting out. The only time I feel really bad about it is like if Tinkerbell comes down, challenges something, and then uses the 2 to ping him off, then I'm like, but that's a whole different story. At that point, he's probably quested 2 or 3 times before they took him out that way. I'm playing 4 of the Cheshire Cat, Not All There. This is actually probably my least favorite card. No, second least favorite card, because the next one is my least favorite card. I'm going to look at what other options are. He's in there because he quests for 2. What do I do if he's challenged and banished? Yes, that's fine. He takes a card off the board. But other than the 2 lore, he's not really a threat, and they can swing into him without taking any damage on the re-attack. So you're investing an attack into him, and yes, you might lose your character, but you can take someone like a Duke of Wesselton and swing him in twice, and then you lost both of them. And I don't feel he works as well as I would like him to, other than if he's questing, he's just going to get the 2, and then they have to figure out how to deal with him because you're racing them at that point. My least favorite card in the deck right now is I'm playing 2 of the Mickey Mouse Steamboat Pilot. He's a 3-cost. I almost always ink him. I've never played him, except I think there's one game I ended up losing the game, but it was basically I top decked him. I'm like, well, I can play him. I have enough what else am I going to do with him? Inking him at that point didn't help me. I didn't need another resource. I needed more cards, and I just didn't have them. I guess in theory, the fact that he's a 3/4 means he should stick around a little bit. They can't just knock him off with a smash. They can't, fire the cannons at him. Well, I guess they could do it twice. It's just he only quests for 1, so his utility in the deck is a little limited unless I really need that 4. And where that 4 comes into is playing it with Rapunzel. If I can put 3 damage on him and I have Rapunzel in hand, it's going to draw me 3 cards. Rapunzel, gifted with healing, is probably the MVP of the deck when you can put damage on your characters. I actually don't know what these guys are called. I'm going to assume they're characters or creations. But, she heals the damage and draws a card for each damage removed this way. She stays alive because she's got the 5 toughness and she quests for 2. So just she benefits, she's inkable, she's 4, she's right on curve, she's not hard to get out. If by turn 4, if you've got her in your opening hand and you can ink every turn, you're going to be able to play her. My only real decision making with her is I need to decide if I'm going to hold off on playing her to wait for damage on someone, or if I just play her because she's going to quest for 2 and probably stick around because of the 5 toughness. I've done it both ways. I think it's just going to come down to what's in your hand and what you got available. I'm also running 4 of Hans, Scheming Prince. He's a 3/3, 4 costs. He's inkable. He quests for 3. He usually becomes ink unless I either don't have another 4 cards, like I don't have Rapunzel, or if I'm close enough to I can put extra lore pressure on the board late. They have to figure out how to deal with him because he's going to quest for the 3. But if I've got him in hand early, he's usually going to become ink more than anything else, just to help me hit the curve. I'm playing 4 Moana of Montanui. I do ink her a lot more than I thought I would. It primarily is because her secondary effect, the, ready your princesses. Rapunzel is the only other princess that I think is in my deck. So it's not super duper helpful in that manner. She quests for 3, so, and she stays alive, which is good. She's inkable, which is good. So, again, similar to Hans, if I can put her down and threaten that extra lore presence, questing presence, whatever you're going to call it, it helps. But she is a 5 cost, so it's, I have other very good 5s that I'm going to play over her unless I don't have another option. Speaking of, Kuzco, Temperamental Emperor, he's 5 cost, not inkable. He's a 2/4, but he quests for 3. He protects himself with ward so people can't target him. And if they do challenge him to take him off the board, he gets to take out the other character. Plus, if they're going to swing in and they're playing a similar game with it, like this, where they have, guys that do 2 or 3 damage, they're going to have to invest 1 or 2 attacks into him because they can't target him with, choose him with a card. Now, things like grab your swords, get around ward because they don't target him. You just can't choose him as the target of something. But he's dealable. People can deal with him, but usually they're investing in an attack or 2 or playing around cards to get him off the board so he doesn't quest for the 3. And if you really needed a challenge with him, 2 damage isn't terrible, and he probably won't die because he's got the 4 toughness, which means you can then play the Rapunzel to heal it off and draw extra cards. I really like Mad Hatter as a 5-drop. He's inkable. He's a 2/4, so similar stats to Kuzco, and he has an ability that says when this character is challenged, you may draw a card. What's great about him is, yes, he's targetable. Yes, they can wipe him off the board. He quests for 3, but if they ignore him, he's going to help you win the game, and if they swing into him, he's going to draw you cards, which help you win the game. And like I said, drawing cards is the weakness of this deck, but between Rapunzel and Mad Hatter, you get that opportunity to say, okay, maybe I'm getting 3 cards off of playing those 2. He also can be healed by Rapunzel to draw some extra cards. So there's some utility there. If I'm forced to pick between them, I usually put Kuzco depending on what the opponent's board looks like, but I'm never unhappy to see Mad Hatter, especially because I can ink him if I really needed to. Stitch Rockstar, playing 4 of, he's a 6 cost inkable, he's a 3/5. He can shift onto the Stitched New Dog for 4, and there's actually a game that you'll see. I didn't know how Pixelborn works its triggers, so I've only really been able to draw cards with him when I'm already in a winning state. The fact that he's quests for 3 is great, and you can basically shift him in for 4 if you've got the right board set up. I think I played a Simba, and I selected it to do the bodyguard. I actually don't think I did before I watched the video. When I'm going to commentate over the video, but like, I never got to draw the card off of the Simba exerting from his ability, because I was like, oh, I'll play the Simba, I don't have to use bodyguard, I'll draw the card, and he's still protecting because of the bodyguard. It's not like it's an activated ability. I didn't get the card. I'm pretty sure I won that game no matter what, because at that point I had enough board presence. Drawing extra cards really didn't matter, and that's kind of where I feel like he's a niche. Maybe I cut him down a little bit because he is 6 cost. If I don't get the Stitch New Dog, or my opponent starts killing off the Stitches because they don't want to deal with having Rockstar come on the board, you know, it takes a little bit to get to dealing with him, or to playing him. But then I'm investing other cards that are going to come into play, exert, so they're challengeable unless I have Simba out. And that late in the game, I don't know that it's helping me win, other than maybe I just get to keep spamming out cards to the next turn. That's my swing to win the game. So I don't know. I got to play with it a little bit more and see how I like it. But maybe he goes down to a 3, especially because I have 3 genies. And the other thing with Genie and with Stitch Rockstar is we're running the action just in time. They're not targetable by just in time because they're 6 costs. So it does turn into they're in your hand longer. At least, with just in time, you can put a Cusco or a Mad Hatter or even a Rapunzel out of your hand a turn earlier, but you're waiting on the Stitch and the Genie to have enough ink to play them. But yeah, playing 3 Genies. I've played him a couple of times. I like him because he's evasive. He quests for 2. I have had issues where playing him because he's uninkable is problematic, because I don't have a good target to send back to their hand, because they have cards that do a when I come into play effect, and I just didn't really like that. So I just sometimes didn't use his secondary ability, and I chose not to target someone. 6 cost, he's late game, he doesn't shift in. He's going to be there to take care of the longer game and bounce things back so that you can swing in for that extra lore 1 turn earlier so that they can't challenge back. Just in time, in theory, is a ramp card, I guess. It's a 3 cost, it's not inkable, it's an action, so it's not a song. You don't get to exert someone. You do get to put something into play early, which is good, but is it, you're not putting in a 7 cost or a 9 cost, you're putting in a 5 cost, so it's very reasonable. It's maybe 2 turns early. Usually what ends up happening when I've played it, it's I'm putting a Mad Hatter or I'm putting a Cusco, because my opponent isn't at a point where they can really threaten to take them off the board immediately, so they're going to invest a turn or 2. So if I have to pick, I'm going to put the Mad Hatter out, because I might draw those extra cards to make up for the disadvantage, in theory, that playing this card and another card created. I got above the curve, which is nice. Mother's Knows Best, I'm a little iffy on it. It's nice because it's a song. I'm running 3 of them. It returns something to the hand. It doesn't kill anything. They can replay it the next turn. And it's similar to like the Genie. If they have something that has when it comes into play effect, you're basically letting them get that ability again. So like Maleficent, that draws a card when she comes into play. Or, there's just, you don't really want to bounce back Tink, because you don't want to then come down and hit your board for 1 across the board. I mean, maybe you do if that's the only card they have on the board. They play Tink again, and then, you get to heal with a Rapunzel. But, just situationally, I feel I don't know that in this set there's better options, but, bouncing something to get the thread off isn't bad, but maybe there's some other utility that can go in there. And then the last card that I'm running 2 lanterns. I think I've only been able to play it twice. It's great when you can do it, because you get to basically speed up your turn, especially if you don't have a 2-drop, like you don't have that Simba on 2, which clearly you're going to play the Simba over you're going to play the lantern. What's nice is you get to play it and exert at the same turn, so you get a little bit of a net benefit there, of being able to, like, you play it on 2, now you can play a 1 cost, so maybe you still have board presence. It being an item means it can get broken by beast or, break. It's helpful. It can definitely speed you up a little bit and get you to have more stuff on the board. So yeah, that's the deck. And then I have 7 screen captures of games I played with the deck on Pixelborn that I'm putting together so that you guys can see it in action. Didn't make any edits to the deck after I put it together. Just kind of wanted to kind of run a gauntlet, see what I encountered. I played it over 2 nights. I think I played 3 the first night and 4 the next night, and just kind of wanted to record them. So I'm going to work on doing some commentary, talk about the choices I'm making during the video, in case that matters to people, if they like that. If not, stop listening to me and just watch the game. But I'm enjoying the game. I think Logan enjoyed the game when we played it a little bit. He's only 6, so some of the concept, it's not a super difficult game, but there's certain concepts like how to combo things together could be problematic.
Can you tell them that I actually did like it?
They can hear you.
I did like the game.
So he was sitting here watching me record, but the arts, he liked the art. He liked, he was actually, I kept interrupting this because he wanted to tell me about the card that he liked on the screen. But, it's a fun game, especially if you're not going to take it super competitively. Right now everything I see is super competitive, but, we had fun. We played some starter deck games and it was fun. And I've been teaching him Pokemon, which I never played when I was younger, so I'm learning it as I teach him. But I felt like this had less of a, decision tree a little bit, right? You're not stuck with not having energy to attach to something, in most cases. And you can, make decks that have everything's inkable, so you don't have to worry about making the decision, or getting stuck with a hand that has nothing you can play for ink. So there's definitely some options there. And the starter decks are actually pretty well constructed so that they can be competitive against each other and not feel like you're just being overrun. And I'll see you guys in a little bit for the gameplay. So in this match, I get to go second. I'm choosing to put back one of the genies, one of the Moanas. I put back both genies. Just they're uninkable. I wanted to get things in my hand. I'm going to ink that Moana, play the Stitch New Dog. This is Amethyst. Pretty sure looking at this, I'm going to ink the Hans. Yep. Play the Loyal Cub. Protect the Stitch a little bit. This is actually my first game with the deck, so I hadn't really figured out the flow a little bit, but I didn't see the what's her name, the Lilo. So quest with both of them so that I can protect. I didn't want to play Mother's Knows Best. I don't want to consider that because bouncing her back to the hand just means she gets to draw a card again. So I kind of left it at I won't play anything on 3. Let's see, what do I do here? I'm going to see it in just a second, but pretty sure I'm going to ink the Cheshire, ink the Cheshire Cat. Just looking at what I drew, then the experience I have with the game now. So something cool that I found is because I had the Rapunzel, I swung in with the Loyal Cub so I could heal it back and draw the 2 cards just to kind of gain a little bit of tempo here. I'm up on lore, but I still kind of feel like under the pressure, especially based on the fact that they're playing Ruby Amethyst, so they're going to have some removal and some extra card draw that I don't have. play the Flynn Rider, bounce back the Gaston so that he can't kill the little cub, keep questing. And they chose to ink the Gaston, and then I was very curious why they chose to Dragonfire the Flynn, other than they don't want to challenge it and lose the card. But I felt like, I don't know, maybe taking out Rapunzel or something else would have been, I guess it's kind of all equivalent at that point. Rapunzel's already done her job with the game effect, so I guess that makes sense. I probably would have made a bad call playing it on the other side and taking out Rapunzel just because she has a higher toughness to willpower to get through. It took a while to decide what the next round was. I also think I got Be Prepared, and I was like, okay, sure. The plus side to this deck, and I think I hadn't really learned the curve yet, was you only need 6 ink, really. So if you don't worry about going to 7, 8, 9, it helps you keep cards in your hand a little bit. He played the Maui, I don't know why I said that weird. But I didn't have anything for him to rush into, so Maui just sits there. I'm at 12 lore, and and I think what I do here is I'm going to let him run into the Stitch if he wants to. I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't, because I know I've got another Mad Hatter, I've got a Moana, and I've got that Cheshire Cat in my hand. So gain back the 3. I go to 15. If he takes the Stitch off the board, okay, that's fine. I still have the Mad Hatter, which is going to bring me to 18. I'm going to be able to play another 3-drop this turn. I think when he plays the Aladdin, I was like, oh, this could be problematic. Let's get rid of it because I don't want to lose the lore and then play the Cheshire Cat. So now I know I'm going to win on the next turn, and he concedes. All right, so game 2, I'm going second. Looking at the hand, send back the Mad Hatter. I think that's the only one that made sense there, because I can ink that guy. I don't know, Duke of Westleton. Weasel didn't play a Stitch. Mike probably sounds a little bit better. I forgot to put it actually in front of me because I was wearing headphones, so I forgot it didn't have a built-in mic. I think here I'm going to play that Lantern. So he didn't play anything, so I felt safe not having anything across the board on turn 2. So now I can maybe play that Hans or the Rapunzel, maybe even sneak in that the Mad Hatter a little early. Drew the Flynn. I'm seeing Tank across the board, so I'm expecting to see the big Tank later. There we go. So now I can protect Stitch a little bit, bodyguard. That might protect the Flynn for a turn. Which, in retrospect, maybe wasn't the best option because, I want them to swing in and lose cards. But, I also want him to be able to get the lore from questing. So this is Sapphire Steel, and I get to sneak in that Cusco a turn early. I'm up to 6 lore. So it looks like they were trying to build an item deck from looking at the cards that they had in there. Smash the Flynn. People really feel Flynn is the big threat. I can see it, but basically you just traded the card that you would have had a discard. I guess you got to pick it, but deciding how I want to use Genie, if I did, who to bounce back. I looked at how much lore they had, and I made the decision if I bounce back that Tink and they have big Tink in their hand, that they'd be able to still play it out of their hand the next turn. So I just kind of figured it wasn't worth bouncing it back. We had a disconnect situation. I don't know on which end, but that's why it says invalid deck, because when it reconnected, this is the second or third time. Inside baseball here is that I had to connect this computer via my iPhone mobile hotspot, so I ended up needing to do that a bit. So I ran, they conceded, but I ran through that pretty quickly. And so game 3, I get to go first. Probably gonna put back the Moana. I have the 2 Stitches, Cheshire Cat. Oh, I kept it all. Okay. Bet. Might have put back the Moana had I been. Maybe it's because it was inkable and I had 2 uninkables in my hand. 3. 2. I have the Lantern and the. What was it? Just in Time. Get the Stitch out. Sapphire Emerald. So I think I get to overlay. Oh no, that's right. I did the just in time. Yeah, because I don't think you can overlay using the Lantern. I don't think you get that benefit. I figured if they're going to swing in with the Flynn, I was pretty safe. I don't know why they didn't quest. Maybe they just didn't want me to tack into Flynn. But, I mean, at that point, I get to lose the card. I'm going to ink the Hans and then shift in the Stitch New Dog. Or Stitch Rockstar. Because when I now have the Loyal Cub in my hand, so I have the ability to play it, draw, exert it, and this is where I think I have a misplay or a timing issue. Send back that Zeus because he took out whatchamacallit, Cusco. I inked the Duke of Wesselton, and I think I should have probably not. I don't know why I didn't get to draw the card here. I shouldn't have inked the Duke of Wesselton at that point because I could have kept it in my hand and done it after the fact, but I should have drawn the card because I didn't play the bodyguard option. So I don't know why I didn't get the card. But I would have at least been able to draw the card off of the Duke of Wesselton coming into play. But play the Hans. I have no cards, so I'm basically just top decking at this point. I'm at 14. He bounced back my Stitches. Pretty sure I can ink the Stitch New Dog and then play the Stitch Rockstar. Oh, and I can Lantern the Stitch Rockstar. So, and then I can play this. Why didn't I do that? Oh, because I didn't ink anything, and basically I have this game wrapped up at this point because he can't. I don't think there's a way that they could wipe the entire board, pull everything out, and. I just did that so I could draw the card because I lost out on the card from playing the Simba. And that was just me being greedy. There we go. Game 4. I think these next set of games go a little bit slower because the formatting that I was capturing in changed. So I might actually be able to do better commentary, although it might be a lot more boring. I'm going to send back that Just in Time. Or I'm thinking about sending back the Just in Time and the Moana because I already have 2 in my hand. Reconsidering the Moana because she's inkable. There you go. And then I end up with another Moana anyway. So that's an easy, first turn ink. play the Lilo. Hope not to get fire the cannons, but, you know, it's an acceptable loss if I do. They're playing Sapphire. I just drew the Flynn. So, yep, ink the Moana. And then I'm probably going to play the Loyal Cub. I think we played the Flynn, right? Because I don't think that there's a rush character that I'm worried about taking out the Lilo. And if they fire the cannons, what's the difference if Simba is exerted at that point? I'm glad I made that play. Now we're watching this. Next time if I don't have a 3-drop, I mean, I've got the just in time, and I'm pretty sure I'll ink. I mean, in retrospect, I'd ink the Stitch, and then just in time the Cusco or the Mad Hatter. Okay, well, retrospect, I would have done that. Because now I'm only really getting one benefit out of the just in time, playing one of them at 4 instead of at 3. Start my questing. They're trying to ramp up with Sapphire. I'd ink the Stitch. Just in time, probably Cusco. Though I think I probably would have done Mad Hatter, just with the experience with the deck at this point. Because if they're going to swing in, I mean, I guess I'm going to quest with Simba, so I guess it didn't matter. But the likelihood with what they have on the board, they're not going to take Cusco off. And if they challenge it to Mad Hatter, I can draw 1 or 2 extra cards off of him. But this is also why gaining experience with the decks help, because you get to see those nuanced plays. And even doing this, going back over, he's going to bounce Lilo back to my hand. I was like, sure. I mean, it takes 2 off. I guess it puts me in a resource curve, because if you put Flynn back to my hand, I have to pay 2 to get him back out. I get Mickey, so I'm going to ink him, because I don't think I've played him in any of the games I've actually played. Now I can play the Mad Hatter, because he's going to quest for 3 anyway. I'm still protecting with Simba. And now I'm in win range right here. Because unless you can take everyone off the board, Cusco alone wins, and I don't think you can board wipe me. Bounce back the Cub. Okay. Yeah, either way, you can swing into everyone, but I'm still going to have the Mad Hatter who's not exerted. I mean, I'm happy that it wasn't like a rage quit situation where they were just like, let's, but I think I've done it where I think they're going to be able to close it out, because it's a little bit better of a feeling, but there we go, he conceded. All right, so game 5, I get to go second. This was a very long match. This is actually where I noticed that we were having some, when I was converting these things, that it was seeming to move at a different pace. I chose not to put anything back for the mulligan. I'm going to ink the Moana, play the Lilo. I've got the Simba in hand. He played the Shield of Virtue. I'll be honest, I did speed this one up a lot because it was a 17-minute video, so I just didn't feel like anyone wanted to watch. I'm pretty sure I lose this one too. I didn't think anyone wanted to watch me play for 17 minutes and lose. I'm going to play that Cheshire Cat because I'm hoping to take something off the board if it swings into it. Otherwise, it's going to start questing. I did get to get 2 lore off of the Lilo before it got destroyed by Gaston. Or the Rafiki. It looks like, I think the Rafiki took out the Simba and Gaston took out Lilo. So they're playing a little bit different of a version of the Ruby Amethyst that I've seen. Because I haven't seen Gaston. I mean, it makes sense looking at it, Rafiki and Gaston being able to come out and knock stuff off the board. I think the Rafiki, because it can quest, becomes more utility than the Gaston, but the Gaston's, less expensive. So, having the Queen in here was an interesting pick. I like it. I did feel like this was a little bit more control. I don't know. It felt a little more control-y playing against it than, which is probably why it also took forever. Than trying to play like combat tricks and trying to, race me for the lore. I got to draw a card off of them taking out the Mad Hatter. Rapunzel got to get nothing because there was no one else on the board with damage. That was the first time I'd seen Ursula. So I just want to kind of read up on it. But I think I just don't get to regain board presence here. So they just keep knocking everything off the board. I kind of was holding it off, trying to hope that I could get something. But, having the Queen be able to exert to draw a card is very good. I think I'm going to eventually end up using the Mother's Knows Best to send back the Queen. Because when Ursula comes into play, you lose a lore. And I inked up to 7 because I'm not sure why I did that, but lost connection there. Start drawing some cards. Hey, there's a Simba. Maybe I can play the Simba. And that's what I learned from that last time. I did it. When I rewatched the video, I did it right. But, that's what happens. Sorry it's a little bit choppy. I think this is just the need of needing to speed this up to make it go this fast. They're up to 9. I think they get a Maleficent out. I know that's something I was worried about. That's right. They be prepared. And then I just have no way to regain, I'm pretty sure. Played that, bounced the Queen back. Put out a Flynn Rider. Inca Hans. Get Befuddled. Get get Maleficent to do. And I can't keep up. They're at 9 lore. Maleficent quests for 2, I think. Yeah. Put the Cusco out in the attempt to, maybe they'll run into him, but I was pretty sure. I'm so far behind on lore at this point. I didn't have a board presence. Be prepared is great, especially if one, I wasn't prepared for it, so I should have listened to the card itself. But being able to then follow up a be prepared with something that's going to spot check the stuff that I get to rebuild. You knew if you played it that you have the other cards in your hand. Especially with the Queen being able to redraw cards. So they got to 16. I'm pretty sure I just played out my hand and then conceded to them so we didn't waste more time. So for the next game, I go second. I think I'm going to put back both of those Mother's Knows Best. Finding them to be less useful to me, especially because I need a 3-drop, and I don't have a lot of solid 3-drops. I guess I could play the Mickey if I ever see it to sing it, but they ink a Hans, and now I know they're playing Emerald like me, and they have the better 1-drop for questing. So I'm gonna assume they're not gonna swing into me, ink the Cheshire Cat, play the 1-drop I've got, and then hope. Of course, they get the Loyal Cubs, so they're protecting the low. I did also draw the Loyal Cub. I'm gonna ink the Moana, play the Loyal Cub. It's, why not? But they're not gonna. I guess they could have swung into Lilo and not lost the Loyal Cub. And they get a second Lilo and a Flynn. So now it's just us, and I'm pretty sure they have the better start, especially with 2 Lilos and a Flynn. I really don't. I mean, I could just in time something. A Mad Hatter. I'd have to wait a whole other turn to overlay the Stitch. So just in time, I guess Cusco. Because at this point, they're not going to swing in with anything. Like they're not challenging me if they don't have to. At least that's if I was playing their deck. They are playing the Maximus, so I guess there is that option where they could swing in and take something out without taking back damage. But and then they know Mother's Knows Best. They take off, and that was smart. Could shift in the Stitch on the next turn. Now just got Cusco. I'm gonna play I'm gonna ink the Mad Hatter. I think I'm just planning to play the Simba to play the Simba, just because. But it might be better for me if I let them swing into Cusco. But I'm pretty sure at this point I was just like, I'm losing this one because they're already at 15 now, 16, 18. They're winning on the next turn, so I concede and walk away. Alright, so game 7. Again, I sped this one up a little bit because, spoiler alert, I lose. Get to ink the Mickey, play the Lilo. I'm feeling pretty confident because I've got the best start that this deck can have, which is Lilo bodyguarded with Simba. They didn't fire the cannons at me, which when I saw them ink some steel, I was like, oh boy, I'm going to lose the Lilo. Quest with both of them, play the Stitch. They're playing Amber Steel. And having Eric being able to swing into Simba is great. And I see the Tink, so I'm immediately thinking I'm going to see the big Tink. So I take out Eric just so that I don't lose another person, and it let me heal Stitch to draw the card. Now I've got a Rapunzel, and then I drew a Rapunzel. But Big Tink comes out, takes out Lilo. I'm going to lose. Now, I thought that was interesting, because now I've got Rapunzel with 3 damage. I was like, well, let's ink the Stitch, heal back to 3, let's draw 3 cards, and let's see what that puts me at. You have to play, and then I was like, oh man, I drew the Stitch New Dog. I could have shifted in Stitch Rockstar, but didn't know that at the time, and I made the decision based on what my hand said. And then they took a nice long time deciding. Because this is very sped up. I think this is at 300%. So, grab your swords. Tink swung in and destroyed the other Rapunzel. And here I was thinking, at least maybe playing the Moana, I can ready the Rapunzel and protect her. I forget how she comes off the board, but she's not long for this world. Yeah, because Tink comes down, gets healed, and just smashes into her and puts 2 kills off the Lilo, which I knew when I played it. I went, they're just going to use Tink to take her out, but I'm pretty sure this was played at about 4 in the morning, so I'm pretty sure I was just like, I wanted to get the games in, not really paying attention to that. Like, after the fact, I was like, oh man. Now I'm at 14 lore, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've got this, except I just lost my whole board. And I went, oh boy. Play Flynn, play Stitch, lose them both, and then basically I don't get to recover. Get a Cheshire Cat. I get smashed. And quest for, 4 more. Bounce something back with Mother's. And see, I have bad choices. I think I send back the Eric. I guess I send back the Tink, because at that point I have no board, so here coming out only does the 1 damage. Or it doesn't do any damage. But, like, using Mother's No Best, if I had a board presence, wouldn't have helped me as much. Send back the Rapunzel, because now he doesn't have any damage people, so he won't draw back the cards. Then 2 Tinks come out. And I've only drawn actions, and at that point, draw the Duke of Weselton. I cannot recover. There's no opportunity, so I cut my losses there. So that was 7 games I played with the exact same deck. Saw some variations on different, decks across from me. Got to play the mirror match. Got to play 2 Ruby Amethyst, which were played very differently. And one, I pretty sure I won very handily, and the other one I just couldn't keep a board state. With an aggro deck or a rush deck like this, it definitely helps to get the presence and be able to run early, because it puts the pressure to respond. It's no longer play the card that's in your hand. Some decks would be able to do that and just say, I'm playing this because that's what my game is. But with Steel and with Ruby, you have answers to take things off the board. Even to some extent, Amethyst can befuddle. You just give me back that card. So, and Emerald, you can do it with Mother's Knows Best and Genie, but it just becomes what's the best option. But if you're putting the pressure on, they have to choose, and if you just keep that pressure on, you can see how quickly I could get to the point where you can't recover. But if you don't play and you don't mulligan aggressively, you're gonna be in a position to not be able to put that pressure on. And in some of those games, especially I think game 4 and 5, I didn't mulligan as aggressively as I wanted to. Well, not wanted to, but should have. I think a little bit was I had 3 or 4 rapid successes, and I was like, I can play this a little more conservatively. And sometimes I like to play tricks. I'm like, oh, this would be cool if, and that doesn't always help, if you're trying to play in a competitive environment. So that's just something to take away from that. But definitely the reps into it help a lot to be able to, get to that point where you're like, I'm comfortable with how the deck plays, and I understand, what my best options are. Should you always mulligan for Lilo? Possibly. If you see that you have Stitch Rockstar and New Dog, it's probably fine. You can make up that extra lore. But, so far, I'm enjoying the deck. I'm going to probably do another series with a different deck. I'm thinking Sapphire Steel. I played against one of the ones I didn't record because I hadn't figured out how to do captures yet. But I found someone was doing a nifty thing with that, and I looked at the cards and went, I could probably do something similar to what they were trying to accomplish. I think it's more, for me, it was the gimmick that maybe it was using the bell, that if you have 10 or more cards in your inkwell, she gets +4 lore. And I was just like, that's crazy. It was a very, very, very long game because, you know, they just kept protecting and stalling and wouldn't swing. But with this deck, I didn't have a lot of answers to get anyone off the board. I think, you know, Aurora gives everyone wards, so that's for a different, you know, thing. So if you like what you saw, if you want us to continue doing stuff like this, if you have comments, let us know. You know, like, subscribe, all that jazz. But, you know, leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of it. If you thought it was too long and you're like, hey, can you make this, you know, a smaller thing, do the DeckTech separate, what, you know, like, just give us some feedback. It's been a little while since I produced anything. I did all of this on my own, trying to also reteach myself how to play, use Premiere Pro and stuff and do editing, because Rich has been handling all that for so long that I'm trying to get back into the habit. But, you know, let us know if you have comments, questions, concerns, if you like what you're seeing, you know, what you might want to suggest that I try in the future. I'm hoping to get Rich set up with Pixelborn. He did pick up a starter deck and a couple of packs recently, so some physical cards do exist somewhere within one of the studios, and my buddy Mike has been, you know, searching things out, so he might have stuff. He was actually at Disney. I got him the starter decks. He left for Disney like a couple of days later, so he might have picked up some stuff while he was down there, because I know they were doing, some of the shops had stuff, product available, so we'll see what happened there. But I'm, you know, hoping that some of the local stores have, you know, physical product for me to grab and start, you know, building a collection, at least for Logan and I to try it out and play it. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining.
Team RTFC.baconicecream.com